Today we explore the extraordinary life of Samuel Taylor, affectionately known as the Ilkeston Giant. Towering at 7 feet 4.5 inches, Samuel was a man who stood out wherever he went. From humble beginnings in Ilkeston, Derbyshire, to the bustling fairgrounds of Victorian Britain, his life was shaped not only by curiosity, but also by an unexpected romance that changed everything. Let's take a look. Samuel Taylor was born on June 4, 1816, in Little Hallam, Ilkeston, Derbyshire. His father, also named Samuel, was a farmer who stood at an impressive 6 feet 9 inches, while his mother, Anne, was approximately 5 feet tall. Samuel was no ordinary child. By the age of 10, he was already nearly 6 foot tall, and at 14, he had grown to 6 foot 10. Eventually, he reached a towering 7 feet 4.5 inches, in an age where the average male stood at barely 5 foot 6. Samuel was a spectacle, mostly admired, sometimes pitied, but always stared at. His size made finding work difficult, but in 1832, at the age of 16, Samuel attended a travelling fair in Castle Donington. He paid a penny to see a giant, expecting to see a man of legendary stature, but instead he found a man no taller than 6 feet 3 inches. When Samuel entered the tent, the crowd gasped. Standing beside the so-called giant, Samuel became the main attraction. In his own words, Samuel described what happened. "I entered the exhibition. A curtain was drawn and disclosed a man perhaps about 6 feet 3. All eyes were turned upon me. I stood beside the giant and made him look very insignificant. He didn't seem much to like the comparison. When I was leaving, the showman tapped me on the shoulder and wished to speak to me. Would I accept of an engagement to travel and be exhibited as a giant? I laughed at the idea, however handsome terms were offered me, and I accepted the situation, regretting at the same time that I had to supplant as well as succeed the giant. The man I had just seen was much chagrined at my intrusion, as he called it, and became very violent and struck me. Now I was quite a youth, only 16, and he a man of 30. I had never fought, and was always inclined to be peaceable, but the blow seemed to arouse the man within me. I madly attacked my rival, and notwithstanding his superior weight and strength, I succeeded in making him cry peccavi. While touring with the fair, Samuel fell in love with the owner's daughter Harriett, a young woman who performed mesmerizing glass-blowing displays. She was intelligent, skilled, and she saw more in Samuel than his height. The two grew close, their bond defying the glances and gossip of others. But when her father, owner of the show, found out, he was furious. Fearing he would lose his talented daughter, he immediately dismissed Samuel. Determined, the couple eloped. They were soon confronted by the furious father and a local constable. But Harriet had gone willingly and was old enough so she didn't need the consent of her father, and there was nothing the officer could do. Her father seized her luggage, but that didn't stop them. Harriet and Samuel were married a few days later. Not long after Harriet's father finally recognized their love for each other and relented. He returned her luggage, offered Samuel his job back, and gave the couple a £5 note as a peace offering. About a year later, the newlyweds set up their own travelling show, but the Taylors faced several challenges in their ventures. Samuel then tried his hand at working with a railway company, but found it unfulfilling. Then they tried running a pub in Manchester, but disaster struck, and they lost £100, a huge sum, and nearly everything they had. Eventually, they returned to the fair circuit, where they found renewed success. Samuel and Harriet brought wonder to crowds across Britain once again. Wherever they went, Samuel drew people in, not just because of his height, but his warmth. Samuel maintained a deep affection for his hometown. In 1869, he brought his show to the Ilkeston Fair, featuring attractions like a crying crocodile, a golden boa constrictor, and his wife's glass-blowing exhibition. Thousands came, not just to see the spectacle, but to welcome him home. Samuel and Harriet had 2 sons who would later recall that Samuel would often look back wistfully as they left Ilkeston, always pausing for one last glimpse of the place where he had spent his childhood, and because of the people who had welcomed him with the kindest regard and affection. In 1875, while preparing to leave Oldham after a fair, Samuel suffered a terrible accident. His leg slipped between caravan platforms, fracturing his thigh. He was admitted to Manchester Infirmary, where he initially showed signs of recovery. But he suffered a sudden relapse due to a chest infection and passed away on June 3, 1875, at the age of 59. When the news reached Ilkeston, the whole town mourned. Samuel's body was transported by train from Manchester to Ilkeston, where it was met by a brass band and a huge crowd. The bells of St. Mary's Church rang a muffled peal in his honour. A service was held at the Independent Chapel before Samuel was laid to rest in Stanton Road Cemetery, just minutes from the house where he was born. Over time, Samuel's grave fell into neglect, but thanks to the Friends of Stanton Road Cemetery, £2,300 was raised to restore it after the red marble stone had fallen and broken into 3 pieces. A wooden statue of Samuel was also erected commemorating the life of the Ilkeston Giant, and in October 2008, his grave was rededicated by Ilkeston-born actor and television star Robert Lindsay. From Samuel's humble beginnings in Derbyshire to becoming a beloved figure in Victorian fairgrounds, his story continues to inspire. His legacy lives on in Ilkeston, where he is remembered not just for his extraordinary height, but for his character. And beside him, in spirit and story, stands the woman who loved him, not for his size, but for the man he truly was. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. Thank you for watching. See you next time.